everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're diving into a topic that I know is going to hit home for a lot of you guys, men's rights, particularly when we look at it through the lens of marriage and all the crazy cultural changes that are happening.
Yeah, it's a minefield out there for sure.
Absolutely. And to guide us through this minefield, we've got this book, The Illusion of Generation Z, Reclaiming Our Lost Masculinity.
Interesting title.
Yeah, and this book, it doesn't hold back. It straight up says that traditional masculinity, the kind a lot of us in the Red Pill community know, and value is under attack.
Under attack, huh?
Yeah, a full-on assault. And the book points the finger at Gen Z and this whole woke culture thing.
I think a lot of our listeners can relate to that.
Yeah, for sure. So let's break this down, starting with the book's main argument. Traditional masculinity is being systematically dismantled, not just challenged, but like taken apart piece by piece.
Okay, so how does the book back that up?
Well, they use some pretty interesting examples. Remember the first Iron Man movie? Tony Stark was like this total alpha male, right? Rash, unapologetic.
Yeah, I remember that.
But then you fast forward to Avengers, Endgame, and he's breaking down, needing comfort, almost fragile.
Huh, interesting.
The author says this isn't just a random thing. It's like a sign of a bigger trend.
Makes you wonder if even superheroes are allowed to be manly anymore.
Right. And it's not just movies. This is happening everywhere. How we raise our sons, what's expected of men in relationships, even how masculinity is shown in ads.
You know, that reminds me of something we talk about a lot in the Red Pill community, these covert contracts and relationships. If society is telling men they can't be those traditional providers, protectors, what happens to those unspoken agreements between men and women?
That's a really good point. And the book doesn't directly talk about covert contracts, but its analysis of these changing gender roles definitely gives us a new way to look at how those contracts are being messed with and becoming unbalanced.
Makes sense.
Now, another big thing that the book tackles is the decline of religion. It says that as younger generations, especially Gen Z, move away from traditional faiths, that framework for masculinity that religion provided is disappearing.
Interesting. So it's not necessarily saying we all need to go back to church or anything. It's more like recognizing that religion played a big role in defining what it meant to be a man, for better or worse.
Exactly. And with that influence fading, there's this void,
Yeah.
a lack of clear guidelines.
And what fills that void?
According to the book, woke culture.
Ah, here we go.
Yeah, and the book doesn't just describe woke culture, it tries to trace its roots back to get this Marxist and communist ideology.
Hold on. Marxism and communism, that sounds a bit out there. Are we talking about some crazy conspiracy theory here?
Not exactly. The author isn't saying there's this secret group of communists trying to take over America. It's more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
He thinks that the basic ideas of Marxism, especially the focus on class struggle and systemic oppression, have been rebranded and repackaged as woke culture.
So instead of workers versus capitalists, it's now like men versus the feminist controlled system or something.
That's basically it. He points to terms like systemic oppression and intersectionality, which, to be fair, are complex and often misused. The author argues that while these terms might have come from legitimate academic discussions, they've been weaponized by woke culture to create this narrative of perpetual victimhood and to demonize traditional power structures.
So it's like they're taking these academic ideas and twisting them to fit their agenda.
Exact. And he says this woke culture isn't just floating around in the ether, it's being actively promoted and enforced by institutions like the media, education, even our legal system.
So give me some examples. How is it actually playing out?
Well, he points to things like California schools assigning students to make posters about the supposed benefits of communism, or history textbooks that kind of gloss over the horrible things that happened under communist regimes.
Wow, that's pretty disturbing.
Yeah, he sees it as a deliberate attempt to rewrite history and indoctrinate younger generations.
So it's like on one side, you've got traditional masculinity based on personal responsibility, hard work, and clear roles. And on the other side, you've got woke culture, which he sees as coming from Marxist ideology focused on collectivism, victimhood, and dismantling traditional power structure.
Exactly. And stuck in the middle is a whole generation caught in this crossfire.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and that sets the stage for how the book looks at how woke culture uses social media to push its agenda, turning it into what the author calls an echo chamber of wokeness.
Social media, yeah, that's a whole other can of worms. And I know a lot of us in the Red Pill community have seen how it can be used to shut down anyone who disagrees and just reinforce a very specific worldview.
Right. And the author says that social media algorithms, those things that are designed to show you content, you'll like actually end up creating these echo chambers where you're only exposed to the same ideas and opinions over and over again, just strengthening what you already believe.
So if you're already leaning towards woke ideology, social media just makes you even more woke.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like this dangerous feedback loop. He argues that it stops you from seeing different perspectives, stifles critical thinking, and makes it harder for people to question their own bias.
It's like living in a bubble.
And it's not just about reinforcing beliefs. The book also connects social media to some pretty worrying trends, like the rise of narcissism and this intense pressure to conform to woke standards.
Yeah, you see that everywhere online. It's like everyone's trying to be the most woke person in the room.
Exactly. The author says that social media encourages this culture of self-promotion and virtue signaling, where people are more worried about looking woke than actually understanding or addressing real social issues. It's like this performative activism, where the goal is to get woke points instead of having real conversation.
All about appearances.
And the author points out the scary effect this has on free speech. People are afraid to say anything that might be seen as unwoke because they're worried about being publicly shamed, ostracized, or even canceled.
That's something I think a lot of people in the Red Pill community have experienced firsthand. It's like this constant pressure to stay silent, even when you see something that's clearly wrong.
And this fear of being canceled, the author says, is killing open dialogue and critical thinking. It's creating a culture of conformity where people are afraid to go against the accepted narrative, even if it means going against their own values and beliefs.
So basically, he's saying social media is like this giant amplifier for woke culture. It's reinforcing those beliefs, promoting narcissism and virtue signaling, and silencing anyone who dares to question the narrative.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's where we start to see the impact on men's lives, especially when it comes to emasculation.
Right. That's a perfect segue into the next part of our deep dive, Emasculated, the crisis of modern manhood. We'll unpack how these cultural shifts amplified by social media are hitting men on a personal level, leaving many feeling lost, confused, and stripped of their purpose. You know, it's fascinating how the book connects all this back to emasculation, and it's not just about feeling less manly. That also goes deep into like the psychological effects, arguing that it creates this deep sense of worthlessness and inadequacy in men.
And this isn't just some abstract concept, right? This has real consequences for men, especially in their relationships.
Absolutely.
I mean, how can a man really step up as a leader, as a provider, if he's constantly being told those qualities are toxic?
You hit the nail on the head.
It's like society is setting men up to fail.
Yeah.
On one hand, they're told that traditional masculinity is bad, oppressive, outdated.
Right.
But then on the other hand, a lot of women still want those qualities in a partner.
Exactly.
The strength, the decisiveness, the ability to protect and provide.
It's like a recipe for disaster.
This clash of expectations, this unspoken conflict between what society wants men to be and what many women still desire.
Yeah.
It creates this breeding ground for resentment and frustration in relationships.
And it all ties back to those covert contracts we were talking about earlier.
Right.
When men are told they can't be those traditional figures, those agreements get thrown out of whack.
Yeah. Men start to feel like they're giving without getting anything in return.
Exactly.
And that resentment builds, leading to all sorts of problems in the relationship.
It's like they're trapped.
Yeah.
If they try to be this sensitive new age guy, they're often seen as weak and unattractive.
Right.
But if they embrace those traditional masculine qualities, they're labeled as toxic and misogynistic.
It's a no-win situation.
And the author doesn't shy away from this. He uses this powerful example from the sports world.
Oh yeah, what's that?
He talks about this athlete who is publicly struggling with his masculinity. This athlete tried to be more sensitive and emotional to fit in with these new expectations, but it backfired. He faced ridicule and criticism, even from the people who were supposedly advocating for these changes.
Well, so even those at the top of their game are struggling with it.
Like a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
A reminder that even those who seem to embody traditional masculinity are having a hard time navigating this new landscape. It highlights the emotional toll this emasculation takes. It's not just about feeling a bit less manly.
Right.
It's about feeling lost, confused, and ultimately less valuable as a man.
So we've laid out the problem. Traditional masculinity is under attack. Woke culture is everywhere, and men are feeling the effects.
Yeah.
But the book doesn't just leave us hanging, right? It offers some solutions, a path forward.
Absolutely.
For men who are feeling lost and disillusioned.
The author doesn't just diagnose the problem, he prescribes some powerful antidotes.
Okay, so what's the first step on this path to reclaiming masculinity?
Well, he starts with personal responsibility.
Yeah.
He urges men to stop blaming outside forces for their problems and take ownership of their lives.
It's that classic red pill idea, right?
Exactly.
Swallowing the red pill, waking up to reality, and taking control.
It's about stepping out of the victim mentality and realizing you have the power to choose your responses, to shape your destiny no matter what challenges you face.
And for a lot of men, that starts with understanding those covert contracts that they've gotten into often without even realizing it, and renegotiating those agreements.
That's huge.
That's something that really resonates with our audience.
Yeah.
A lot of guys in the red pill community are waking up to these unspoken contracts in their relationship,
Yeah.
realizing they've been playing by a set of rules they never agreed to.
And the author's focus on personal responsibility gives them a way to address that.
Right.
It's about taking a hard look at the dynamics in your relationship, figuring out those unspoken agreements, and having those tough conversations to create a more balanced and fulfilling partnership.
So personal responsibility is step one. What else does he suggest?
Well, he puts a lot of emphasis on rediscovering those traditional masculine values.
The ones we were talking about earlier.
Things like strength, courage, stoicism, self-reliance.
It's like going back to basic.
In a way, yes.
Rejecting the sensitive new age guy and embracing the strong silent type.
But it's not about becoming some caricature of masculine. It's about finding that balance between strength and sensitivity, assertiveness and empathy.
So not a caveman, but embodying those masculine traits in a way that's authentic and relevant today.
Exactly. And the book gives some practical advice on how to do that.
Like?
It encourages men to focus on physical fitness, self-improvement, pursuing meaningful goals.
It's that level up mentality.
Yeah.
That's so big in the red pill community. Constantly striving to improve yourself physically, mentally, emotionally.
He's saying that by investing in yourself, becoming the best version of yourself, you naturally exude confidence and attract respect.
And that can change the dynamics in your relationship,
Absolutely.
allowing you to show up in a more authentic and empowered way.
It's about taking control of your life, your destiny, your masculinity, and not letting society tell you who you should be.
And that leads into the author's next point, finding your purpose.
Right. He says men need something bigger than themselves to strive for.
A mission that gives their life meaning and direction.
Exactly. Especially in today's world where traditional roles are blurred and society isn't giving men a clear path.
It's like they're told to figure it out on their own, but without any guidance.
That's why this idea of finding your purpose is so important.
Yeah.
He argues it's the antidote to emasculation. It's about figuring out what truly drives you, what makes you feel alive, and going after that with passion and dedication.
So it's not about waiting for society to hand you a purpose. It's about taking ownership, creating a life that's meaningful and fulfilling.
Exactly. And for a lot of men, this journey of self-discovery can be really empowering. It lets them step out of the shadow of societal expectations and define their own masculinity on their own terms.
It's about reclaiming that sense of agency, that sense of control over their own lives.
And that's why I think this book really resonates with the Red Pill community.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's offering a similar message of empowerment, self-reliance, taking control of your own destiny.
So we've got personal responsibility, embracing those core masculine values, finding your purpose. That's a solid foundation.
It is.
But the author doesn't stop there. He goes into specific areas where these principles can be applied.
What?
Like education, pop culture, even the way we raise our children.
He really goes deep into how woke culture has infiltrated these institutions.
Yeah.
And he offers some pretty radical solutions for pushing back.
And that's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
We'll uncover the author's blueprint for combating this woke agenda and reclaiming these vital aspects of our lives. So we talked about personal responsibility, reclaiming those masculine values, finding your purpose.
Yeah.
But the author takes it a step further, right? He digs into how we can actually fight back against this woke agenda on a bigger scale.
Right.
Starting with something that I think hits home for a lot of us, how we raise the next generation.
And he calls out this thing he calls the participation trophy syndrome.
Yeah.
This idea that we're so busy protecting kids from failure, from discomfort, that we're actually doing them a disservice.
It's like we've gone overboard with the whole safe space mentality.
Yeah.
We're trying to create this perfect world for kids, free from any risk or hardship.
But the author says this is making them weaker.
Less prepared for the real world.
Exactly. If you're always shielded from discomfort, you never learn how to cope. You never develop that grit, that resilience to overcome obstacles.
And then when they finally do face challenges as adults,
All apart.
it's like we're setting them up for a rude awakening.
Right.
They go out into the world expecting everyone to be nice and to get rewarded just for showing up.
And then reality hits them hard.
And the author argues that this is especially bad for boys.
He thinks boys need those challenges, those opportunities to test their limits, to push themselves to fail and learn from those failures.
It's how they build those core masculine traits.
Strength, courage, determination.
So what's the alternative? What does he suggest we do differently?
He says we need to go back to meritocracy.
Okay.
Ditch the participation trophy, stop rewarding mediocrity, and start teaching kids that success is earned, not given.
It's about teaching them the value of hard work, perseverance, delayed gratification. And it's not just about winning or losing.
No, it's about building character.
Developing those inner qualities that will help them throughout their lives.
Exactly. And he uses some really interesting examples to prove his point.
Like what?
He talks about Michael Jordan getting cut from his high school basketball team.
Oh, yeah.
And J.K. Rowling facing tons of rejections for her Harry Potter books.
Wow.
He's saying those setbacks, those failures were actually crucial to their success.
It shows that adversity can make you stronger.
It can forge those qualities of resilience and determination that you need to achieve achieve anything worthwhile.
And it ties back to reclaiming masculinity.
Right.
It's about teaching boys that it's okay to struggle, it's okay to fail, as long as they learn from it and keep going.
It's about giving them that sense of agency, that belief that they have the power to create their own destiny.
Okay, so we need to rethink how we raise our kids, how we prepare them for the real world. But the author doesn't stop there. He also criticizes the education system, saying it's become a breeding ground for woke ideology.
Yeah, he's particularly worried about what he sees as too much focus on social justice issues.
Often at the expense of basic academic subjects.
He says schools are spending more time indoctrinating kids with progressive ideologies than teaching them critical thinking skills or preparing them for jobs.
He gives some pretty disturbing examples.
Like those California schools teaching about the supposed benefits of communism.
It's like they're trying to rewrite history to make these failed ideologies seem progressive and beneficial.
And the author sees this as really dangerous. He says it's creating a generation of young people who can't think critically, who can't tell fact from fiction, and who are easily manipulated.
It's like they're being trained to just accept whatever authority figures tell them.
Their teachers, the media, those social media influencers pushing these woke agenda.
And the author's solution is to go back to traditional education.
Focus on the basics.
Critical thinking skills, a more balanced approach to history and social issues.
He's urging parents to get involved, to really look at what their kids are being taught, and to challenge schools that are pushing a one-sided agenda.
So it's about taking back control of education.
Making sure our kids are getting a well-rounded education.
One that teaches them to think for themselves, to navigate the world, and to make informed decisions.
And it's not just about protecting them from woke ideology. It's about giving them the tools to critically evaluate any ideology, any belief system, and to come to their own conclusion.
Okay, so we've talked about raising kids and education. But there's another area where the author sees this woke agenda having a huge impact.
What's that?
Pop culture.
Oh yeah, he spends a whole section on that.
Analyzing how movies, TV shows, music, even video games are being used to push woke ideology.
And shape the attitudes and beliefs of younger generations.
He uses examples like Taylor Swift and Beyonce,
Oh yeah.
saying these pop stars are using their platforms to push a specific political agenda.
Often disguised as empowering women or promoting social justice.
And the author's worried that this creates a distorted view, especially for young people who are still figuring out their own values.
It's like they're constantly bombarded with messages that reinforce a specific worldview.
And that often demonizes traditional masculinity and promotes a victimhood mentality.
And it goes back to that idea of social media as an echo chamber of wokeness.
Yeah.
It's like these celebrities and influencers are using their platforms to create this feedback loop,
Where their woke pronouncements are amplified and validated by millions of followers.
creating this illusion that their perspective is the only right one.
And the author's solution isn't to censor or boycott these artists.
No.
He's advocating for media literacy.
Teaching people, especially young people, the skills to analyze these messages, to break down the narratives, and to form their own opinion.
It's about being an active consumer of media.
Not just passively absorbing whatever's thrown at you.
It's about understanding that everything you see, hear, and read has an agenda, a bias, a perspective.
And it's your job to figure that out, to filter the information, and to come to your own conclusion.
Okay, so we've covered a lot in this deep dive. We've explored the author's argument that traditional masculinity is under attack,
That woke culture is behind it.
and that this agenda is being spread through things like education, pop culture, and social media.
But the book isn't all doom and gloom.
No, it offers a way forward.
The solutions for men who are ready to reclaim their masculinity and fight back against these harmful trends.
And it's a message that I think is really powerful and relevant for our audience.
Especially those in the married red pill community.
The author's focus on personal responsibility, embracing those core masculine values, finding your purpose, taking a proactive approach to raising kids, educating yourself, engaging with media.
It all fits perfectly with the red pill philosophy.
It's about taking control of your life, your relationships, your future.
It's about rejecting the narratives that are being forced on you and creating your own path.
If you're ready to take that journey, I highly recommend checking out The Illusion of Generation Z, Reclaiming Our Lost Masculinity.
It's a really thought-provoking book that will challenge your assumptions, validate your experiences, and give you a roadmap for navigating this crazy cultural landscape.
You can find it on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
Go check it out.
And remember, you're not alone in this. There's a whole community of men out there, including those in the Married Red Pill subreddit, who are waking up to these issues and taking action. Keep the conversation going, support each other, and never stop fighting for what you believe in. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay strong.